The screaming of torn metal and the acrid smell of burning circuitry dragged Lieutenant Marcus Kane back to consciousness. His stealth fighter, the Wraith's Edge, had become a twisted sculpture of carbon fiber and titanium wrapped around what appeared to be a crystalline spire jutting from the moon's surface. Emergency lights bathed the cockpit in hellish red as Marcus fought against his restraints, tasting copper blood on his lips. "Mayday, mayday! This is Wraith 7 Alpha," he gasped into his comm unit, but only static answered. The quantum encryption array had been sheared clean off during the crash. He was alone on Zarian, deep in enemy territory, with no way to contact the fleet. Marcus had volunteered for this reconnaissance mission, specifically because of its danger. 3 months ago, his younger sister had died in the Proxima Station massacre when Hive Empire raiders had torn through the civilian habitat like tissue paper. The official reports claimed 12,000 dead, but Marcus had seen the classified footage bodies drained of fluids. Entire families cocooned in alien silk, children's screams cut short by chittering mandibles. He'd requested immediate transfer to the front lines, burning for revenge against the insectoid monsters that had murdered his family. Now, as he struggled free from the wreckage, that burning hatred felt strangely distant, like a half-remembered dream. The crash must have rattled his brain more than he'd thought. The crystalline formation surrounding his crash site pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, casting dancing shadows across the lunar landscape. In the distance, towering spires of what looked like living coral stretched toward the star-filled void, their surfaces crawling with movement. Marcus checked his sidearm still functional and activated his suit's stealth field. If he could reach the emergency beacon in his survival kit, he might be able to signal for extraction before the Hive forces found him. He'd made it perhaps 50 meters when the ground beneath his feet began to vibrate with a rhythmic thrumming. The crystalline formations around him flared brighter, and Marcus realized with growing horror that they weren't geological features at all. They were some kind of organic sensor network. His stealth field was useless against biotechnology that could detect heartbeats and neural activity. The Hive warriors emerged from hidden tunnels with fluid grace, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming like black mirrors. Each stood nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws and compound eyes that tracked his every movement. Marcus drew his weapon, knowing it was futile. There were at least 20 of them, and his plasma pistol held only 12 shots. "Come on then, you bastards," he snarled, raising the weapon. "Let's see how many of you I can take with me." But instead of attacking, the warriors simply surrounded him, their mandibles clicking in what might have been communication. One of them, larger than the rest with intricate scarification across its carapace, stepped forward and spoke in perfect, unaccented English. "Lieutenant Marcus Kane of the Terran Colonial Navy, you will come with us. The Empress wishes to speak with you." The casual use of his name and rank sent ice through Marcus's veins. How could they possibly know who he was? His mission was classified at the highest levels, his identity scrubbed from all databases before launch. "Unless we know of your sister," the warrior continued, its voice a disturbing harmony of clicks and human speech. "Sarah Kane, age 19, studying xenobiology at Proxima University. The Empress extends her condolences for your loss." Marcus's finger tightened on the trigger, rage flooding through him. "Don't you dare speak her name, you murdering." The attack on Proxima Station was not authorized by the Hive Empire, the warrior interrupted. "Rogue elements. Pirates using stolen biotechnology. Your sister's death was regrettable." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. For 3 months, he'd nursed his hatred, used it to fuel his training, his dedication to this mission. The idea that Sarah's killers might not even have been legitimate Hive forces was almost too much to process. The journey to the Hive complex took 2 hours through tunnels that pulsed with organic light. Marcus found himself studying his captors with professional interest despite his situation. Their movements were too coordinated to be mere soldiers. They functioned more like components of a single organism, anticipating each other's actions with uncanny precision. When they finally emerged into a vast chamber carved from living coral, Marcus's breath caught in his throat. The throne room was a masterpiece of bioengineering, its walls breathing gently as nutrients flowed through visible circulatory systems. Bioluminescent patterns shifted across the ceiling like aurora, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with microscopic organisms that cleaned and recycled every molecule. But none of that registered after Marcus saw the figure seated on the living throne at the chamber's heart. Empress. Zarathik was nothing like the monsters from the propaganda vids. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her exoskeleton a deep emerald green that shifted to gold at the joints. 4 graceful arms moved with liquid precision, and her compound eyes. God, her eyes were like liquid mercury, reflecting depths that seemed to hold entire galaxies. When she spoke, her voice was a symphony of harmonics that resonated in Marcus's chest. "Lieutenant Kane, I am sorry for your loss." The words should have triggered fury, should have sent him lunging for her throat despite the impossibility of success. Instead, Marcus found himself captivated by the genuine sorrow in her alien features. His heart began racing, but not from fear or anger. Something else entirely was flooding his system, a warmth, an attraction so powerful it made his knees weak. What?" he stammered, horrified by his body's reaction. This was the enemy, the leader of the species that had killed his sister. Why did he suddenly want nothing more than to step closer, to hear her speak again? "Your sister was studying our biology," Zarathik continued, rising from her throne with fluid grace. Her research papers were quite insightful. She understood that our species are not so different, both struggling to survive in a hostile universe, both capable of great beauty and terrible violence. Marcus tried to focus on her words, but found himself mesmerized by the way she moved. The elegant curve of her neck, the intelligence burning in those impossible eyes. His training screamed warnings. This was some kind of pheromone attack, a biological weapon designed to pacify human prisoners. But the attraction felt so real, so overwhelming, that rational thought became increasingly difficult. "Why am I here?" he managed to ask, his voice barely a whisper. Zarathik stepped closer, and Marcus caught a scent like ozone and honey that made his head spin. "Because your people are preparing for war, Lieutenant. And because I believe you might be the key to preventing it." She gestured with one of her lower arms, and the chamber's walls came alive with holographic displays, star charts, fleet movements, tactical analyses. Marcus recognized the formations immediately. Operation Cleansing Fire, humanity's planned assault on the Hive Empire's core worlds. Information that should have been classified beyond his clearance level. "How do you know about?" "We have our sources," Zarathik said softly, her compound eyes fixed on his face. "Just as your people have theirs. The question is, do you want to be part of the solution or part of the slaughter?" Marcus stared at the tactical displays, his mind reeling. Everything he'd believed about this mission, about the war, about the enemy standing before him, was crumbling. And beneath the confusion and betrayal, that inexplicable attraction continued to grow, drawing him toward the alien Empress like gravity itself. He was in serious trouble. 3 months had passed since Marcus's capture, though the word capture no longer seemed appropriate. He stood on the observation deck of the Hive's primary orbital station, watching Earth's diplomatic convoy approach through the swirling nebula that concealed Zirian's location. The sight should have filled him with relief rescue at last. Instead, he felt only annoying anxiety that he couldn't quite explain. "You're troubled," Zarathik's voice came from behind him. That familiar harmonic resonance that never failed to send warmth cascading through his chest. He turned to find her approaching with that liquid grace that had captivated him from their first meeting. Her emerald carapace catching the light from the nebula's distant stars. "The negotiations," Marcus said, though that wasn't entirely true. "I want them to succeed." It was a statement that would have been unthinkable 3 months ago. Lieutenant Marcus Kane, who had volunteered for a suicide mission to strike at the heart of the Hive Empire, now found himself desperately hoping for peace between their species. The transformation still bewildered him. Zarathik moved to stand beside him at the viewport, close enough that he could smell that intoxicating scent of ozone and honey that seemed to emanate from her skin. "You've been invaluable in preparing for these talks," she said, her lower left arm brushing against his shoulder. "Your insights into human psychology, your understanding of military doctrine, without you, we would never have known how to approach your people." Marcus felt a flush of pride at her praise, followed immediately by a stab of guilt. He'd shared classified information freely, helped the Hive prepare countermeasures against human tactics, even assisted in drafting the peace proposal that Earth's diplomats were coming to discuss. By any definition, he was a traitor to his own species. So why did it feel so right? "I should return to my quarters," he said, stepping back from the viewport. "Prepare for tomorrow's sessions." Zarathik's compound eyes tracked his movement with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. "Stay," she said softly. "The night cycle is beginning. We could talk." The suggestion hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that Marcus had been trying to ignore for weeks. Their relationship had grown beyond captor and prisoner, beyond even allies working toward a common goal. The attraction he'd felt from their first meeting had deepened into something that terrified him with its intensity. "Zara," he whispered, using the shortened form of her name that she'd given him permission to use in private. "We can't, we can't, because I'm alien?" she asked, stepping closer. "Because your people would call it abomination?" "Because I don't understand what's happening to me," Marcus said, his voice cracking. 3 months ago, I hated your entire species. I came here to kill you, and now I can't imagine being anywhere else." Zarathik reached out with one of her upper arms, her chitinous fingers surprisingly gentle as they traced the line of his jaw. "Perhaps you've simply learned to see past the propaganda. Perhaps you've discovered that love can transcend the boundaries our species have built between us." The word love hit Marcus like a physical blow. Was that what this was? This overwhelming need to be near her, to please her, to protect her even from his own people? The intensity of it frightened him. No emotion should be this powerful, this all-consuming. "I need to think," he said, pulling away from her touch despite every instinct screaming at him to lean into it. "I'll see you tomorrow." He fled to his quarters, a luxurious suite that the Hive had provided him in the station's diplomatic section. The walls were lined with living coral that pulsed gently with bioluminescent patterns, responding to his emotional state with colors that shifted from the deep blue of calm to the agitated orange of distress. Marcus collapsed onto the bioformed sleeping alcove, pressing his palms against his temples as a familiar headache began to build. These episodes had been growing more frequent lately, sharp, stabbing pains that seemed to originate deep in his brainstem. The Hive's medical drones had found nothing wrong with him, but the pain was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. As he lay there, fragments of memory began to surface, disjointed images that didn't quite fit with his recollections of the past few months. A sterile white room, restraints holding him to a metal table, voices discussing neural pathways and behavioral modification, the smell of antiseptic and ozone. Marcus sat up sharply, his heart racing. The memories felt real, but they made no sense. When had he been in a medical facility? The only treatment he'd received was for his injuries after the crash, and that had been in the Hive's organic healing chambers. The headache intensified, and with it came more fragments. A woman in a white coat, her face obscured by surgical lighting, saying something about perfect integration and undetectable conditioning. A man's voice, cold and clinical. The subject will experience complete loyalty to the target. He won't even realize he's been programmed. No, Marcus whispered, pressing his hands harder against his skull as the pain reached excruciating levels. That can't be. But even as he denied it, pieces began falling into place. His inexplicable attraction to Zarathik from the moment he'd seen her. His willingness to betray classified information. The way his emotions seemed to override his rational mind whenever she was near. The complete absence of the hatred that had driven him to volunteer for this mission in the first place. The pain reached a crescendo. And suddenly, Marcus was somewhere else entirely strapped to a surgical table while technicians in hazmat suits worked over him with instruments he didn't recognize. One of them, a woman with cold gray eyes, leaned over him with a neural interface probe. "The conditioning will be unbreakable," she was saying to someone outside his field of vision. "He'll believe every emotion is genuine, every choice his own. The target will never suspect she's being manipulated through him." "And the activation protocol?" a man's voice asked. "A simple quantum pulse transmitted on the emergency frequency. When he receives it, the final programming will engage. He'll eliminate the target and have no memory of doing so." Marcus jerked back to the present, gasping and covered in cold sweat. The bioluminescent walls around him had shifted to a violent red, responding to his terror and rage. He staggered to his feet, his mind reeling with the implications of what he'd remembered. He'd been programmed, conditioned. Everything he felt for Zarathik, every moment of tenderness and attraction, was artificial, the product of neural manipulation designed to make him the perfect assassin. And somewhere, his handlers were waiting to activate the final protocol that would turn him into her killer. His comm unit chimed with an incoming message on the emergency frequency. Marcus stared at it in horror, knowing with absolute certainty what it contained. The activation signal. The command that would override his conscious mind and turn him into a weapon. But as his finger hovered over the accept key, one thought cut through the programming like a blade. If his feelings were artificial, why was he fighting so hard to protect them? Why did the thought of harming Zarathik fill him with such anguish that he could barely breathe? The comm unit chimed again, more insistently. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of an impossible choice settling on his shoulders. Follow his programming and complete the mission that would prevent a war his people believed they needed to fight. Or trust in emotions that might be nothing more than sophisticated neural conditioning. And risk everything on the hope that somewhere beneath the artificial compulsions, something real had taken root. The chiming stopped. The message had timed out, but Marcus knew they would try again. And next time, he might not be strong enough to resist. He had to warn Zarathik, even if it meant admitting that everything between them was a lie. Marcus found Zarathik in her private chambers, standing before a living mural that depicted the history of her people, millennia of evolution from simple hive insects to the sophisticated civilization that now spanned dozens of star systems. She turned as he entered, her compound eyes immediately registering his distress. "Marcus? What's wrong?" The words caught in his throat. How could he explain that everything between them was built on a lie? That his feelings, no matter how real they seemed, were the product of neural conditioning designed to make him her killer? "I need to tell you something," he began, then stopped as his comm unit chimed again. The emergency frequency. His handlers weren't giving up. Zarathik's expression shifted, her antennae twitching with sudden alertness. "That signal pattern," she said slowly. "I've seen it before in our intelligence reports. It's a Terran military activation code." Marcus stared at her, realizing that her species' ability to detect and analyze electromagnetic patterns was far more sophisticated than humans had ever suspected. "You know what it is?" "A trigger," she said, her voice taking on a dangerous edge. "The kind used to activate sleeper agents." Her eyes fixed on his face with laser intensity. "Marcus, what aren't you telling me?" The comm unit chimed a third time, and Marcus felt something shift in his mind, a pressure building behind his eyes, a compulsion to accept the signal that grew stronger with each pulse. His hand moved toward the device without his conscious command. "I was programmed," he gasped, fighting against the neural conditioning that was trying to override his will. They did something to my brain. Made me feel. Made me want." The words came out in broken fragments as he struggled against the artificial impulses flooding his system. Zarathik moved with inhuman speed, her 4 arms working in perfect coordination as she activated the chamber's security protocols. Energy barriers snapped into place around them, blocking all external communications. The chiming stopped, but Marcus could feel the programming fighting against the interruption, sending spikes of agony through his skull. "How long have you known?" she asked, her voice carefully controlled. "Just now. The memories. They're coming back." Marcus doubled over as another wave of pain hit him. "I'm supposed to kill you. When I receive the final activation signal, I won't be able to stop myself." To his amazement, Zarathik didn't recoil or call for guards. Instead, she moved closer, her upper arms reaching out to steady him as he swayed on his feet. "I've known about your conditioning for 6 weeks, she said quietly. Marcus's head snapped up, shock cutting through the pain. "What?" "My species can sense artificial neural patterns," she explained. "The modifications to your brainstem create a distinctive electromagnetic signature. I detected it during our 3rd meeting, but I wanted to see what you would choose when you discovered the truth." "You've been testing me?" The betrayal hit him like a physical blow. "Everything we've shared, everything I thought we had, was real," Zarathik interrupted firmly. "The conditioning may have created the initial attraction, but what grew between us transcended that programming. I've watched you fight against your artificial impulses every day, choosing compassion over hatred, understanding over prejudice. That wasn't your conditioning, Marcus. That was you." The COM unit activated again, this time bypassing the security barriers with a quantum-encrypted signal that cut straight through the station's defenses. Marcus felt the final protocol engaging, his vision blurring as foreign commands flooded his neural pathways. "Kill the target," a voice whispered in his mind, cold, mechanical, irresistible. "Complete the mission. Eliminate the Empress." His hand moved to the concealed poison capsule in his back molar, the one he'd forgotten about until this moment. A single bite would release a biotoxin specifically designed to be lethal to hive physiology. All he had to do was kiss her, and Zarathik would die within minutes. "I can't fight it," he whispered, his body moving toward her against his will. "Zara, run, please." But she didn't run. Instead, she stepped closer, her compound eyes reflecting depths of understanding that took his breath away. "Then don't fight it," she said softly. "Trust yourself. Trust what we've built together." Marcus's teeth closed on the capsule, the bitter taste of the poison flooding his mouth. The programming screamed at him to complete the kiss, to deliver the toxin that would end the war before it began. But as he leaned toward Zarathik, something else rose up from the depths of his mind, not artificial conditioning, but genuine emotion forged through months of shared conversations. Quiet moments and growing understanding that he loved her. Not because he'd been programmed to, but because she'd shown him a different way of seeing the universe. Because she'd trusted him with her people's secrets and her own vulnerabilities. Because she'd seen past his conditioning to the man beneath and chosen to believe in him anyway, at the last second. Marcus turned his head and spat the poison onto the chamber floor, where it hissed and bubbled against the living coral. The programming shrieked in his mind, sending waves of agony through his nervous system. But he held onto that core of genuine feeling like an anchor in a storm. "I choose you," he gasped, falling to his knees as the conflicting neural commands tore at his consciousness. "Not because they made me, but because I want to." Zarathik knelt beside him, her arms encircling him as he convulsed with the effort of breaking free from his conditioning. "I know," she whispered. "I've always known." The chamber's walls suddenly blazed with emergency lighting as proximity alarms began wailing throughout the station. Through the viewport, Marcus could see the sleek shapes of human warships dropping out of hyperspace, not the diplomatic convoy they'd been expecting, but a full battle fleet. They're not here to negotiate, Marcus realized, his mind clearing as the programming finally began to break down. This was always meant to be a first strike. The peace talks were just a cover. Zarathik was already moving, her fingers dancing across bioneural interfaces as she accessed the station's command systems. "How long do we have?" Marcus forced himself to his feet, his military training reasserting itself now that his mind was his own again. 20 minutes, maybe less. They'll want to disable your defenses before you can call for reinforcements. Then we need to move quickly. Zarathik's compound eyes met his, and Marcus saw not just trust there, but hope. "Are you with me?" "Always," he said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. Together. They raced toward the station's communication center. Marcus's insider knowledge of human tactics combining with Zarathik's understanding of hive technology. They had one chance to prevent a war that would devastate both species broadcast, the truth about the military conspiracy to both fleets simultaneously. Using Marcus's own story as proof that humans and hive could choose cooperation over conflict. As they worked side by side, Marcus felt the last of his artificial conditioning crumble away, leaving behind something far more powerful, the conscious choice to love someone who had every reason to hate him, and the determination to build a future worthy of that love. The war could still be stopped. But first, they had to survive the next 20 minutes.